The shimmering desert heat distorted the horizon as Henrietta Lawson stepped down from the stagecoach. Her threadbare valise clutched tightly against her chest like a shield. Val Verde, Texas, in the summer of 1875 looked nothing like the promising frontier town she'd read about, or rather, had been told about in the letter from her late aunt's attorney. The dusty main street, lined with weathered storefronts and hitching posts, stretched before her like an uncertain future. Miss Lawson, a tall figure, approached, silhouetted against the harsh afternoon sun. "Samuel Zachary, I'm the attorney who wrote to you about your aunt's property." Henrietta nodded, squinting up at the man. His clean-shaven face and pressed suit marked him as one of the few professionals in town. "Thank you for meeting me, Mr. Zachary. It was a long journey." "I imagined so." He gestured toward a small building with a painted sign reading Zachary Legal Services. "Shall we discuss your inheritance? I have the deed prepared." Inside his office, the attorney retrieved a document from a polished desk drawer. "Your aunt left you her small homestead and bookshop. It's modest but debt-free. The shop hasn't been opened since her passing 3 months ago." Henrietta stared at the papers he slid across the desk, a knot forming in her stomach. The familiar sense of shame crept up her neck as she glanced at the unintelligible marks on the page. She'd come west hoping for a fresh start, somewhere her secret wouldn't matter. "Is something wrong, Miss Lawson?" Mr. Zachary asked, noticing her hesitation. "No, She paused, swallowing hard. "Could you perhaps explain what it says?" The attorney's eyebrows rose slightly before he composed his expression. "Of course. It's merely stating that as Mary Lawson's only living relative, you inherit her property at 423 Cottonwood Lane, including the adjacent business Lawson's Books and Stationery on Main Street." Henrietta nodded, relief washing over her. "When may I take possession?" "Immediately. I have the keys right here." He reached into another drawer. "Will you be continuing with the bookshop?" The question struck like a physical blow. A bookshop. Her aunt had left her a bookshop, of all things. The cruel irony wasn't lost on her. "I'm not certain yet," she replied carefully. "I need to assess everything first." After completing their business, Henrietta followed Mr. Zachary's directions to Cottonwood Lane. The small clapboard house sat nestled beneath a large cottonwood tree, its white paint peeling but otherwise sturdy. Inside, dust motes danced in sunlight streaming through lace curtains. The furnishings were simple but comfortable: a horsehair sofa, a dining table with 4 chairs, a small kitchen with a cast-iron stove. It wasn't until the following morning that Henrietta ventured to the bookshop on Main Street. The bell above the door tinkled as she entered, and the smell of paper, leather, and dust enveloped her. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, stuffed with books of every size. A small counter stood at the back, a ledger open upon it. Henrietta ran her fingers across the spines, admiring the textures while simultaneously drowning in despair. What cruel twist of fate had given a bookshop to a woman who couldn't read? The shame she'd carried since childhood resurfaced with vengeance. A knock at the door startled her. Through the window, she saw a man in a dusty hat and worn leather vest. She hesitated before turning the sign to open and unlocking the door. "Morning, madam," he said, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair. "Shop's been closed a spell. Good to see it open again." "I'm just assessing things today," Henrietta replied. "I inherited it from my Aunt Mary." Recognition dawned in his blue eyes. "Miss Mary's niece. Heard you might be coming. Sorry for your loss. She was a fine woman." "Thank you, Mr. Zachary. Samuel Zachary. Most folks call me Sam." He smiled and the corners of his eyes crinkled. "I run the Double Z Ranch outside town. Your aunt ordered books for me regular like." "You're the attorney?" Henrietta asked, confused. He chuckled. "No, madam, that'd be my brother Stephen. Folks mix us up sometimes, though we ain't much alike except in name." "I see." Henrietta noticed the calluses on his hands as he replaced his hat, marking him unmistakably as a working man. "I was hoping to pick up that book Miss Mary ordered for me before she passed." "Stephen mentioned you might be reopening." Henrietta's throat tightened. "I'm not sure what arrangements my aunt had made. What book was it?" "Twain's new one. Tom Sawyer. She wrote me saying it had arrived just before." He trailed off respectfully. "I haven't gone through her records yet," Henrietta said, her palms beginning to sweat. Sam nodded understandingly. "No hurry. I reckon you got plenty to sort through." He glanced around the shop. Miss Mary kept a special order shelf behind the counter. Might be there. Henrietta moved to the shelf he indicated, finding several books with paper slips protruding from them. The slips contained handwritten names, but they might as well have been hieroglyphics to her eyes. "Is this it?" She held up a book at random. Sam approached, taking it gently. "No, madam. This one's labeled for Doc Wilson." He set it down and searched the shelf himself. "Here we go. S. Zachary, that's me." Henrietta nodded, hoping her face didn't betray her embarrassment. "That will be. How much did my aunt charge you?" $2 for special orders," Sam replied, reaching into his pocket. He placed the coins on the counter. Miss Mary always said books were worth their weight in gold, but she never charged it. As he turned to leave, Henrietta was struck by a sudden panic. Running this shop was impossible. She'd have to sell it, but who would buy a bookshop in a frontier town? "Mr. Zachary," she called after him. "Do you know anyone who might be interested in purchasing this business?" He turned, surprise evident on his tanned face. "Selling already. Miss Mary's shop is an institution in Val Verde. I'm not certain I'm suited to run it," she admitted carefully. Sam studied her for a moment. "Town needs a bookshop, Miss Lawson. Folks around here value learning, even us cowhands." He paused. "If you're set on selling, I might know some interested parties. But why not give it a chance first?" After he left, Henrietta slumped against the counter. How could she possibly give it a chance when she couldn't read the titles, couldn't write receipts, couldn't manage inventory? The secret she'd hidden her entire life would be exposed within days. Over the next week, Henrietta kept the shop closed, claiming she was taking inventory. She spent her days organizing books by size and color rather than subject or author, hoping to create some system she could navigate. In the evenings, she explored her aunt's house, finding personal correspondence she couldn't decipher, and a journal filled with inscrutable marks. A week after her arrival, the bell above the shop door jingled while she was dusting shelves. She hadn't unlocked it but turned to find Sam Zachary standing there, hat in hand. "Forgive the intrusion, Miss Lawson." Door was unlocked around back. "Mr. Zachary, I'm not open yet," she said, clutching her dust cloth. "I can see that." He looked around at the strangely organized shelves. "Been rearranging, I see. Just trying to put my own touch on things." He nodded slowly. "Interesting system you got. Never seen cookbooks shelved with mathematics before." Heat flushed Henrietta's cheeks. "I'm still sorting through everything." "Miss Lawson," Sam said gently, "something tells me there's a problem you're not sharing. Folks in town are asking when the shop will reopen. School's starting soon, and parents need books for their children." The mention of school intensified Henrietta's shame. She'd never attended school herself, raised by a father who saw no value in educating a girl and kept her working from dawn to dusk on their failing farm. "I'll open when I'm ready," she said defensively. Sam set his hat on the counter. "Miss Lawson, Henrietta, if I may, something's troubling you." "Is it the business side? Stephen could help with that." Henrietta turned away, arranging and rearranging a stack of books to hide her trembling hands. The business side is fine, Mr. Zachary. I simply need time. Sam, he corrected softly, and I don't believe you. Your aunt mentioned you in her letters, said you were bright as a new penny, said you helped your pa run his farm after your ma passed. Managing a bookshop should come easy to someone with your gumption. My father's farm was different, she whispered. How so? The question hung in the air between them. Henrietta could feel his eyes on her back, patient and curious. The weight of her secret pressed on her chest, making it difficult to breathe. What would this man think of her if he knew the truth? In her experience, nothing earned contempt faster than ignorance. Mr. Zachary, Sam, I appreciate your concern, but this is my business now, and I'll handle it as I see fit. He was silent for a moment. Miss Mary would want the shop to thrive. She believed books changed lives. Said they saved hers after her husband died. The mention of her aunt's passion pierced Henrietta's heart. She'd never known Mary well, only through occasional letters her father had read aloud before his death last year. Letters that had prompted her to seek out her only living relative when her father's farm was foreclosed. I need to close up now, she said firmly. Sam retrieved his hat. Tomorrow's Sunday. No services in the morning since the preacher's visiting his sister in Austin. If you'd like, I could show you around the area, help you get acquainted with Val Verde. The offer surprised her. That's kind but unnecessary. Fresh air does wonders for clearing a troubled mind, he persisted. I'll come by at 10 if you're agreeable. Before she could refuse again, he tipped his hat and left, the bell jingling in his wake. The following morning, despite her better judgment, Henrietta found herself waiting on her front porch at 10 o'clock. Sam arrived on horseback, leading a gentle-looking mare. Hope you can ride, Miss Lawson. It's the best way to see the countryside. I can ride, she confirmed, one of the few skills she was confident in. They rode out of town, following a stream that wound through cottonwood groves and open rangeland. Sam pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the area's settlement. For the first time since arriving in Val Verde, Henrietta felt her anxiety easing. They stopped for lunch beneath a large oak tree. Sam spread a blanket and produced bread, cheese, and apples from his saddlebag. My brother thinks you're avoiding him, Sam said as they ate. Says you haven't responded to his note about property taxes. Henrietta froze. Note, he left it at the shop 3 days ago. Said it was important you understand the tax situation before decisions are made. Another wave of shame, another reminder of her inadequacy. I've been busy, she said weakly. Sam studied her. Miss Lawson, forgive my boldness, but something's troubling you beyond grief or business concerns. I consider myself a fair judge of character, and you seem frightened. Henrietta stared at her hands. The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. How long had it been since anyone had looked past her defenses, since anyone had cared enough to notice her struggle? There's nothing wrong with asking for help, he continued. Everyone in Val Verde needed a helping hand at some point. It's how we survive out here. A tear escaped before she could stop it. Henrietta brushed it away quickly, but Sam had already seen. Whatever it is, he said softly, it can't be as bad as you're making it out to be. It is. Her voice was barely audible. It's shameful. I doubt that. She looked up at him then, at his honest face and kind eyes. What did she have to lose? She couldn't hide forever, and the thought of leaving this haven her aunt had created was unbearable. I can't read, she admitted shamefully, the words like broken glass in her throat. I never learned. My father didn't believe girls needed education. I can barely write my own name. The silence that followed seemed endless. Henrietta waited for the judgment, the disappointment, the pity. When she finally gathered the courage to look at Sam, she found none of those things. Instead, his expression held something that looked remarkably like admiration. That took courage to admit, he said finally. And it explains a lot, he paused. But it doesn't explain why you think it's shameful. Henrietta blinked in surprise. Because it is. I'm ignorant. A grown woman who can't read a simple note or the label on a tin can. Sam shook his head. Not knowing something isn't shameful. Not wanting to learn might be, but that's clearly not the case with you. How can I run a bookshop when I can't read the titles? The same way you've managed everything else in your life with determination and resourcefulness. He leaned forward slightly, and perhaps with a little help. I can't ask for that kind of help. The whole town would know. They don't have to. Sam considered for a moment. I'll teach you. Henrietta stared at him. What? I'll teach you to read and write. His voice was steady, his offer sincere. I've taught cowboys and ranch hands before. Some of my men came to me not knowing their letters, and now they read newspapers and write letters home. You can't be serious. I'm entirely serious. He smiled warmly. I'll teach you every night if that's what it takes. No one need know but us. Hope, dangerous and fragile, fluttered in Henrietta's chest. Why would you do that for me? You barely know me. Because everyone deserves the chance to learn. Because your aunt would want you to succeed. Because I believe you've got more grit than most men I've known. He paused. And because I've seen how you look at those books like they contain treasures you're desperate to discover. Tears welled in her eyes again. It would take too long. I'm 24 years old. Age doesn't matter to learning. My foreman was 40 when he first learned his letters. Now he keeps all our ranch records. Sam reached across the blanket and tentatively took her hand. What do you say, Henrietta? Will you let me teach you? The warmth of his hand around hers was reassuring, his calloused palm a testament to his own hard work. She found herself nodding before she could think better of it. Yes, she whispered, but it must remain our secret. You have my word. He squeezed her hand gently. We'll start tonight. That evening, Sam arrived at her back door with a slate, chalk, and several children's primers tucked under his arm. They sat at her kitchen table, lamp burning low, as he showed her how to form the letters of the alphabet. A, B, C, he recited, writing each letter. These are the building blocks of everything you'll learn. Henrietta watched, mesmerized, as the chalk formed shapes that held meaning. When it was her turn to try, her hands shook so badly she could hardly hold the chalk. It's all right, Sam encouraged. No one learns to rope a steer on their first try. By the end of that first lesson, Henrietta could identify several letters and write a wobbly version of her name. The accomplishment, small as it was, filled her with pride. Same time tomorrow? Sam asked as he prepared to leave. Yes, please, Henrietta replied, staring down at her name on the slate with wonder. Over the next weeks they established a routine. During the day, Henrietta would open the bookshop for limited hours, using a system Sam had helped her devise. Books were organized by subject, with colored dots indicating price categories. For customers placing special orders, she would write it down for later and memorize the requests, which Sam would help her record during their evening lessons. Each night, they worked for hours on reading and writing. Sam proved to be a patient teacher, never showing frustration when Henrietta struggled or when she forgot something they'd covered before. Instead, he found new ways to explain concepts, often relating letters and words to things from ranch life she could understand. Think of letters like cattle, he told her one evening when she was particularly discouraged. Each one different but part of the same herd. Round up enough of them in the right order and you've got yourself a word. As summer transitioned to fall, Henrietta's progress accelerated. She began recognizing common words in the primers, then forming simple sentences. The joy she felt when reading her first complete story, a children's tale about a cat, brought tears to her eyes. I did it, she whispered, looking up at Sam with wonder. I read a whole story. The pride in his eyes matched her own. You surely did, Henrietta, and there are thousands more waiting for you on those shelves. Their lessons expanded beyond reading. Sam brought newspapers, explaining current events and showing her how to read headlines. He taught her practical mathematics for running the shop. And sometimes, when they were tired of formal lessons, he would simply read to her poetry, novels, history opening worlds she'd never known existed. As her confidence grew, so did her business. The bookshop became a welcoming place where Henrietta recommended books based on what she'd learned from Sam and from listening to her customers. She started a children's story hour on Saturday mornings, reading simple tales she'd practiced beforehand. To her surprise, parents brought their children eagerly, and no one seemed to notice when she occasionally stumbled over a word. One evening in late October, as golden leaves from the cottonwood drifted past her window, Sam arrived with something tucked under his arm that wasn't their usual lesson materials. "I brought something special tonight," he said, placing a package wrapped in brown paper on the table. "What is it?" Henrietta asked, curiosity piqued. "Open it and see." She carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a beautiful leather-bound book. The gilded title caught the lamplight, Pride and Prejudice. "It was your aunt's favorite," Sam explained. "She recommended it to me years ago. I thought you might like to read it." Henrietta ran her fingers over the embossed cover. "It looks difficult." "It is challenging," he admitted. "But you're ready for a challenge. We'll read it together." That night, they began taking turns reading paragraphs aloud. Henrietta struggled with the complex language but persevered. When they finished the first chapter, Sam closed the book with a satisfied smile. "You've come so far in such a short time," he said. "You should be proud." "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how the lamplight softened his features. Sam cleared his throat. "There's a harvest social at the church this Saturday. Would you consider attending with me?" The invitation caught her off guard. Their relationship had remained strictly that of teacher and student, though Henrietta had become increasingly aware of the warmth that spread through her whenever he was near. "As friends?" she asked cautiously. "If that's what you'd prefer," he answered, his eyes telling her he might hope for more. Henrietta hesitated. "People will talk if we arrive together. Let them talk," he smiled. "I'm not ashamed to be seen with the finest bookshop owner in Val Verde." The social was livelier than Henrietta had expected. Lanterns hung from the church eaves, casting a warm glow over trestle tables laden with harvest bounty. A small band played fiddle and banjo while couples danced on a wooden platform. Sam introduced Henrietta to countless townspeople, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back as they moved through the crowd. She noticed the curious glances, the whispered comments behind hands, but found she didn't mind as much as she'd feared. "Miss Lawson." A woman approached, dragging a reluctant teenage boy by the arm. "I'm Mrs. Patterson. My son Tyler has been devouring those adventure books you recommended. His teacher says his composition skills have improved tremendously." "I'm glad to hear it," Henrietta replied, genuinely pleased. "I just received some new titles he might enjoy." As the evening progressed, more parents approached with similar comments, thanking her for fostering their children's love of reading. The irony wasn't lost on Henrietta. Just months ago, she couldn't read a word, and now she was being praised for literacy advocacy. "See," Sam whispered as they finally claimed a quiet moment alone. "You're making a difference already." When the band struck up a waltz, Sam extended his hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Lawson?" She hesitated. "I'm not much of a dancer." "Neither am I," he confessed with a grin. "We can learn together." On the dance floor, his arm around her waist felt right, as though it belonged there. They moved somewhat clumsily at first, finding their rhythm gradually until they were gliding smoothly among the other couples. "You're full of surprises, Samuel Zachary," Henrietta said, looking up into his face. "Cowboy, teacher, and now dancer. I could say the same about you." His voice lowered. "You're the bravest person I know, Henrietta." The sincerity in his eyes made her breath catch. "I don't feel brave. That's what makes you remarkable. You face your fears without recognizing your own courage." His hand tightened slightly around hers. "Do you know how rare that is?" As the music swelled, Sam pulled her a fraction closer. "I find myself thinking about you even when we're not having lessons," he admitted. "Is that inappropriate of me to say?" Henrietta's heart raced. "No," she whispered. "I think about you too." The music ended, but they remained standing close together, oblivious to the curious glances from townspeople. It wasn't until Stephen Zachary approached that they stepped apart. "Brother," Stephen greeted Sam with a nod before turning to Henrietta. "Miss Lawson, a pleasure to see you socially. I trust you received my notes about the property taxes." Henrietta tensed. "Yes, thank you. Everything is in order." Stephen raised an eyebrow. "I'm glad to hear it, though I'm still waiting for your signature on those documents." "I'll bring them by your office Monday," she promised, aware of Sam's reassuring presence beside her. After Stephen moved on, Sam squeezed her hand gently. "You handled that well. And you will sign those papers Monday because tomorrow we're adding legal document reading to our lessons." Henrietta smiled gratefully. "You think of everything." "Not everything," he replied. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you in Val Verde." As autumn deepened into winter, Henrietta's reading skills improved dramatically. She could now manage most of the books in her shop, though complex texts still required concentration. Her writing had progressed from laborious letter formation to flowing sentences, and she kept her own ledger books with growing confidence. The bookshop thrived under her management. She expanded inventory based on customer requests and began ordering periodicals from Eastern publishers. When the school needed new readers, the teacher came to Henrietta for recommendations, never suspecting her secret. Through it all, Sam continued his nightly visits, though their lessons gradually shifted. Now they often read together for pleasure, discussing ideas and sharing opinions. Sometimes they simply talked, learning each other's histories and dreams. Henrietta told him about her difficult childhood, her father's bitterness after her mother's death, and her longing for education. Sam shared stories of building his ranch from nothing, of drought years and good years, and his hope to someday pass it on to children of his own. As Christmas approached, Val Verde transformed with greenery and ribbons decorating storefronts. Henrietta arranged a special window display featuring holiday books and colorful paper ornaments. Business boomed as townsfolk purchased books as gifts. One snowy evening in mid-December, Sam arrived for their usual session carrying a small pine tree. "What's this?" Henrietta laughed as he maneuvered it through her door. "Every home needs a Christmas tree," he declared, setting it up in her parlor. From his coat pockets, he produced small ornaments, wooden stars, paper angels, and a tiny horseshoe carved from bone. "I made these myself." They decorated the tree together, their hands occasionally brushing, sending pleasant shivers through Henrietta. When they finished, Sam produced a small package from his vest pocket. "It's a bit early, but I wanted to give you this now." Henrietta unwrapped it to find a silver bookmark engraved with her initials. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Turn it over," he urged. On the reverse was engraved, "To H.L. Words brought us together, may they never part us. S.C." Tears welled in her eyes as she read the message, the significance not lost on her. 6 months ago, she couldn't have read these words that now meant everything. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the bookmark to her chest. Sam took her free hand. "Henrietta, I know we started this arrangement as teacher and student, but it's become much more to me." His voice was low, earnest. "I find myself thinking about you constantly. About your courage, your determination, your kindness." Henrietta's heart pounded. "Sam, you don't need to say anything now," he continued quickly. "I just wanted you to know that my feelings have grown beyond friendship, but I value what we have too much to risk it if you don't feel the same." She looked up at him, this man who had changed her life, who had given her the gift of words without judgment or condescension. "I do feel the same," she admitted softly. "I have for some time." Relief and joy spread across his face. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers in a gentle kiss. Henrietta responded, her hand moving to his cheek as the kiss deepened. When they finally parted, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that for months," he confessed. "Why didn't you?" she asked, breathless. "I was your teacher first. It wouldn't have been right until you felt confident in your abilities, until our relationship was more balanced." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And I wanted to be sure what I felt was real, not just the satisfaction of helping someone. And now I'm certain." His eyes held her steadily. "I love you, Henrietta Lawson, not because you needed my help or because I admire your perseverance, though I do, but because of who you are. The woman who faces each day with determination, who treats everyone with kindness, who finds joy in learning." Tears spilled down Henrietta's cheeks. "I love you too, Sam, for seeing me, really seeing me when I was trying so hard to hide." Their lessons continued through the winter, though their relationship had fundamentally changed. Now their evenings often ended with long conversations by the fire and tender kisses goodnight. Sam began courting Henrietta properly, escorting her to church socials and town gatherings. Val Verde buzzed with the news, though most assumed their relationship had begun at the harvest social. By early spring, Henrietta could read almost anything she set her mind to, though she still occasionally struggled with unfamiliar words. Her writing had become neat and precise, and she maintained the shop's accounts meticulously. Only Sam knew how far she had come, how many hours of frustration and triumph had led to this point. One evening in April, as wildflowers carpeted the plains surrounding Val Verde, Sam invited Henrietta for a ride. He took her to a hilltop overlooking his ranch, where a picnic awaited beneath a lone oak tree. "Your land is beautiful," Henrietta remarked as they spread the blanket. Rolling grasslands stretched to the horizon, dotted with cattle and bisected by a winding creek lined with cottonwoods. "It's taken years of hard work," Sam said, pride evident in his voice. "When I first came here after the war, it was just raw land. Now it's one of the most productive spreads in the county." They ate and talked, watching the sun begin its descent toward the western mountains. As twilight approached, Sam reached into his saddlebag and removed a book. "I brought something to read," he said, opening to a marked page. "It's poetry. I thought you might enjoy it." Henrietta smiled, always eager to experience new literature. She leaned against him as he began reading a love poem, his deep voice giving weight to the beautiful words about finding one's perfect match, about building a life together. When he finished reading, he closed the book and turned to face her. "Henrietta, these past months have been the happiest of my life." He took her hands in his. "I never expected to find someone who would challenge me, inspire me, and love me the way you do." Henrietta's heart began to race as Sam reached into his pocket and removed a small velvet box. "I know it hasn't been long, but when something is right, you just know it. He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring with a small pearl. "Henrietta Lawson, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears filled her eyes as she nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, Sam, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart soar. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "I promise to love you and support you every day of our lives together." "And I promise the same," she whispered. "You gave me the world when you taught me to read. Now I want to build a life with you." They were married on a perfect June day in 1876, with the entire town of Val Verde in attendance. The church overflowed with flowers, and Henrietta wore a simple cream gown with lace that Stephen's wife had helped her select in Austin. After the ceremony, the celebration continued well into the evening, with dancing and feasting under a canopy of lantern light. As they prepared to leave for their honeymoon a week in San Antonio, Henrietta pulled Sam aside. "I have something for you," she said, pressing a small package into his hands. Sam unwrapped it to find a leather-bound journal. Opening it, he discovered pages filled with Henrietta's careful handwriting. "I've been working on it for months," she explained. "It's the story of how we met, how you taught me to read, and how I fell in love with you. I wanted you to have a record of our beginning." Sam's eyes glistened as he leafed through the pages. "This is the most precious gift I've ever received," he said, voice thick with emotion. "To see your journey in your own words." "It's your journey too," she reminded him. "We wrote this story together." Their life together unfolded like a well-crafted novel. Henrietta moved to the Double Z Ranch after their honeymoon, though she continued to run the bookshop in town. They converted one room of the ranch house into a library, filling it with books they read together in the evenings. Henrietta's secret remained between them, though she became less fearful of discovery as her confidence grew. She started a reading program for the ranch hands, many of whom had never had formal education. Sam watched with pride as she used her own experience to help others, never revealing her past struggles, but drawing on them to teach with patience and understanding. A year after their wedding, their son James was born, followed 2 years later by their daughter Elizabeth. From their earliest days, Henrietta read to them, determined that her children would grow up loving books and learning. Sam built special low shelves in the nursery, filled with colorful picture books that the children could access themselves. As the children grew, so did the ranch and the bookshop. Henrietta hired an assistant to help manage the store while she divided her time between town and home. The business expanded to include a small printing press, where they published a town newspaper and occasionally small books of local interest. In 1885, 10 years after Henrietta had first stepped off the stagecoach in Val Verde, she stood in her bookshop arranging a display for a special event. The town was celebrating its 20th anniversary, and as part of the festivities, Henrietta had organized an exhibition of local authors. "Everything looks wonderful," Sam said, entering the shop with their children in tow. At 9, James was a miniature version of his father, while 7-year-old Elizabeth had Henrietta's chestnut hair and determined spirit. "Just finishing up," Henrietta replied, adjusting a stack of books. "Is everything ready at the ranch for the party tomorrow?" "All set. The hands have the pavilion built by the creek, and the musicians are confirmed." Sam grinned. "Stephen says half the county will be there, as long as the weather holds." Henrietta glanced out at the clear blue sky, "though I think we're blessed with perfect timing." Elizabeth tugged at her mother's skirt. "Mama, can I read my poem at the celebration? The one about the wildflowers, of course, sweetheart. Everyone will love it." James, ever practical like his father, asked, Should I help Uncle Stephen with the barbecue tomorrow? He said he could use an extra hand. That's very thoughtful, Sam said, ruffling his son's hair. You're becoming quite the responsible young man. As the children explored the shop, picking out books for the weekend, Sam drew Henrietta into a corner. I have something for you, he said quietly, producing a small package from his pocket. A little early anniversary present. Henrietta unwrapped it to find a beautiful fountain pen with her initials engraved on the gold band. For your writing, Sam explained. I thought it was time you had a proper tool. She looked at him questioningly. My writing, the stories you've been working on at night. Did you think I hadn't noticed? He smiled gently. I've seen the pages you hide in your desk drawer. Children's stories, aren't they? Henrietta blushed. They're nothing special, just little tales I make up for James and Elizabeth. They're wonderful, and you should share them. He took her hands in his. You have a gift, Henrietta. The children in town would love stories written by their favorite bookshop owner. You think I should try to publish them? The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. I do. Remember what you always tell, the children's stories are meant to be shared. He kissed her softly. From a woman who once couldn't read to a published author, what an incredible journey. The following day, as friends and neighbors gathered at the Double Z Ranch to celebrate Val Verde's anniversary, Henrietta found herself surrounded by the life she never could have imagined when she first arrived. Her children played with friends near the creek. Sam supervised the barbecue with his brother, and townspeople browsed tables of local crafts and foods. When it came time for the planned entertainment, Elizabeth recited her poem about wildflowers to enthusiastic applause. Various townspeople performed music or shared stories of the early days of settlement. Then Samuel Zachary, now the mayor, called Henrietta forward. As many of you know, Henrietta Lawson Zachary has been the heart of our town's literary life for a decade now, he announced. Her bookshop has educated and entertained us all. Today, she has something special to share. Sam squeezed her hand encouragingly as Henrietta stepped forward, carrying a small, simply bound book. Her hands trembled slightly as she faced the crowd. Thank you all for coming today, she began. Val Verde has given me more than I could ever have dreamed when I arrived here 10 years ago. It gave me a home, a purpose, a family. She smiled at Sam and their children, and it gave me the courage to follow a dream. She held up the book. This is a collection of stories I've written for my children. With Sam's encouragement, I've had them printed, and I'd like to share one with you today. Opening to the first page, Henrietta began to read aloud confidently, clearly, her voice carrying across the gathering. It was a simple tale about a young girl who discovers a magical library where books come to life, teaching her about courage, kindness, and the power of believing in oneself. As she read the final words, silence hung over the crowd for a moment before erupting into applause. Elizabeth and James beamed with pride, while Sam watched her with eyes full of love and admiration. Later, as twilight fell and lanterns illuminated the celebration, Sam found Henrietta sitting alone by the creek, watching the water flow by. There's my famous author, he teased gently, sitting beside her. Your story was a hit. Mrs. Patterson already asked if you'll read at the school next week. Henrietta leaned against his shoulder. I still can't quite believe it. Sometimes I worry I'll wake up and discover this has all been a dream, the reading, the writing, you, our children, all of it. It's no dream. Sam wrapped his arm around her. You earned every bit of this happiness through your hard work and determination. We earned it together, she corrected. I would never have had the courage without you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the music and laughter from the party. You remember that first day you came to the bookshop? Sam asked. You were trying to organize books by color." Henrietta laughed. "I was terrified you'd discover my secret. I knew something was wrong, but I never guessed what it was." He kissed her temple. "When you finally told me you couldn't read, do you know what I thought?" "What?" "I thought, this is the bravest woman I've ever met. And every day since then, you've proved me right." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Do you ever regret it, coming to Val Verde, taking on the bookshop, marrying a dusty cowboy?" Henrietta's eyes shimmered in the lantern light. "Not for a single moment. Every challenge led me to where I am now, and I wouldn't change a thing." She smiled. "Well, perhaps I would have learned to read sooner if I'd known what I was missing." "Better late than never," Sam chuckled. "What about you? Do you regret offering to teach me every night?" "Only that I didn't offer sooner." He traced her cheek with his fingertips. "Teaching you to read gave me the greatest gift of all you." From the celebration came the sound of their children calling for them. Henrietta and Sam stood, hand in hand, ready to rejoin the party. "I love you, Samuel Zachary," Henrietta said, squeezing his hand. "And I love you, Henrietta Lawson Zachary," he replied. "Today and always." As they walked back toward the lights and music, Henrietta reflected on the journey that had brought her here from a shameful secret to a life filled with words, love, and possibility. The girl who couldn't read had become a woman who wrote stories, who taught others, who had found her place in the world. And it had all begun with 5 simple words. "I'll teach you every night."